What if the crucifixion wasn't merely a tragedy on a desolate hill, but the epicenter of a cosmic battle waged in unseen realms? What if, at the very instant Jesus was nailed to the cross, two archangels, Michael, heaven's unyielding warrior, and Uriel, the burning light of divine wisdom, didn't just witness the event, but actively intervened in a way that reshaped eternity? You may think you know the story of the crucifixion, but I promise you've never encountered it from this vantage point. Veiled within the shadows of Calvary and whispered about in realms beyond human comprehension, something extraordinary occurred, defying earthly logic and challenging everything you thought you understood about that pivotal moment. Why did darkness shroud the sun at midday? What spiritual warfare unfolded as Jesus writhed in agony? And what role did Michael and Uriel play when the Roman spear pierced the King of Glory? Stay with me, because the actions of these two archangels at the cross will revolutionize your understanding of spiritual combat and reveal the unfathomable depths of Jesus' sacrifice. It's time to unveil secrets long concealed. Are you ready to embark on a journey of truth? Well, let's delve beneath the surface and expose the mysteries of Calvary. Hell trembled. Michael and Uriel confronted Lucifer at the cross. If you believe the story of Calvary was confined to a dusty hill outside Jerusalem, encircled by Roman soldiers and curious onlookers, you have only grasped a sliver of the truth. Most perceive the cross through a purely terrestrial lens. They envision the rough-hewn wood, the lacerated flesh of a man struggling for breath, and the jeering faces of his tormentors. These elements are undeniably real, but they represent only the visible crust of a mystery far more ancient, far darker, and infinitely more profound. Imagine for a moment transcending the limitations of flesh and sight. If you could pierce the veil separating the mortal realm from the realm of spirits, what would you behold suspended above that desolate hill called Golgotha? What if I told you that above the cries of the crowd and the clang of Roman hammers, an ancient war was reaching its climax? A conflict that predates Adam's very existence. Allow me to guide you into that unseen dimension where reality possesses a sharper, more terrifying clarity. Scripture offers us a glimpse. It records that around midday, a palpable terror gripped the earth. The Gospel of Matthew states, "From the 6th hour, there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour." Matthew 27:45. But was this simply a natural phenomenon? A coincidental eclipse? The sky didn't merely dim or grow murky. It turned utterly black, swallowing all light for 3 relentless hours. Birds ceased their songs. The ground seemed to hold its breath, and the hearts of men trembled under an inexplicable oppression. This darkness was no ordinary shadow. It was as if heaven itself had drawn a curtain across the sun, not to conceal the spectacle, but to demarcate a battleground. In the spiritual realm, that dimension layered invisibly atop our own, a tempest raged. Can you imagine standing there, feeling the weight of an atmosphere so saturated with conflict that even the angels hushed their voices? Not a single seraph dared to utter a word of worship. Instead, the heavenly host hovered in tense, watchful silence, as if the very fate of eternity hung precariously on the agony unfolding below. Have you ever experienced a darkness in your own life that seemed to transcend mere misfortune or human cruelty? A gloom so palpable, it felt as if a larger force was at play. Perhaps what enveloped Golgotha that day was a cosmic echo of the battles still being waged for human souls. It is a sobering thought. While men hammered nails and gambled for garments, unseen forces clashed in a fury that could scarcely be contained within the heavens. So, what actually transpired above Calvary, in that theater where Michael and Uriel stood watch, where Lucifer himself dared to approach the trembling earth? Could it be that, in that dreadful silence, lines were being drawn and kingdoms were being weighed? Hold that thought, for the story is only beginning to unfold. Lucifer, the fallen one, the ancient serpent who once led choirs of radiant stars in heaven's courts, sat upon his throne of shadows, his gaze fixed on Calvary with chilling satisfaction. Can you picture it? The very being who once glided through streets of pure gold, whose voice crafted harmonies that resonated through eternity, now lurking in darkness, relishing what he believed was his ultimate victory. Ever since Eden, when he first heard that haunting prophecy reverberate through the garden, "And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel." Genesis 3:15. He had meticulously planned for this day. For millennia, he twisted kingdoms, whispered into the ears of rulers, and incited humanity to bloodshed, all to arrive at this ghastly spectacle. The promised seed of the woman, strung up, mutilated, and seemingly abandoned, or so it appeared. But pause and consider. Did Lucifer truly grasp the significance of what was unfolding? As he coiled there in his infernal pride, convinced that heaven's narrative was unraveling, he failed to perceive who else had gathered at the threshold of mortal perception. For Lucifer was not alone in his observation. Poised in realms beyond the reach of human senses stood two of the most enigmatic and awe-inspiring beings ever to grace the presence of God. Michael, the archangel of war, the commander of heavenly armies, whose name signifies "who is like God," stood ready. And beside him stood Uriel, the archangel of divine light and hidden knowledge, whose very essence radiated the wisdom of the Almighty. Can you sense the palpable tension that must have crackled between them, a vibration more profound than sound itself? Michael's presence was overwhelming, almost too vast for the spiritual plane to contain. He towered like a living mountain, clad not in ornamental gold, but in armor that pulsed with ancient fire, flames older than the sun itself. Every plate bore inscriptions of God's covenant names: El Shaddai, Jehovah, Nisi, Elohim, glowing as if seared into the metal by the very hand of God. In his mighty grasp, a sword blazed, its blade humming with power, etched with the very breath of the Creator. And his wings, they were not mere feathers, but swirling expanses that shimmered like nebulae, entire galaxies seemingly imprisoned in perpetual flame. Uriel was a vision of such intensity that he could sear the soul. His entire being resembled a furnace ignited to the brilliance of 10,000 suns, his eyes molten with revelations that no mortal mind could comprehend without shattering. Though Scripture barely mentions him, ancient texts whisper of Uriel as the guardian of prophecy and the interpreter of divine riddles, a confidant to mysteries too profound for earthly tongues. These two had been silent observers for ages, present at every critical juncture in God's intricate tapestry of redemption. They were the keepers of divine thresholds, ensuring that every minute detail of God's timeline unfolded uncorrupted. Now they stood, or rather, flanked the trembling boundary between heaven and earth. bearing witness to the unthinkable, their own creator nailed to splintered wood, gasping in human frailty. Imagine being there, swept into that supernatural vantage point, feeling the icy grip of Lucifer's smug dominion, yet witnessing Michael's fierce readiness and Uriel's incandescent intensity. Would your heart not tremble, wondering what cataclysm might erupt if Lucifer dared to overstep heaven's boundaries? Or would you sense that these angelic titans were not poised for immediate battle, but were guardians of a deeper, more astonishing plan, one that might extend into your own struggles and hidden shames? And so they waited, as did all of creation, holding its breath at the precipice of a moment that would redefine eternity. But what would transpire next? In that charged silence between life and death, pride and promise remained veiled, beckoning you closer to witness the unfolding mystery. The ground convulsed, quaking under a weight it was never designed to bear. But if you could have penetrated the veil separating the physical from the spiritual, you would have witnessed a far more harrowing spectacle. The spirit realm wasn't merely disturbed, it was screaming. As Jesus' battered body strained against the nails, releasing guttural cries that echoed across Judea, something profound shifted in that invisible dominion that overlays our reality like a second skin. Angels assigned to the lower heavens began to tremble. Their radiant forms, accustomed to hymns and divine errands, shivered with an unease that rippled through creation. Even the darker beings, the demonic hordes that had gathered in twisted delight to witness Lucifer's triumph, began to recoil. Could you envision it? Legions of malevolent spirits, once gleeful over the torture of heaven's prince, now retreating from Golgotha's skull-shaped hill, their eyes darting nervously, their talons twitching, as if sensing that the ground beneath them might split open and swallow them whole, because something didn't align. This was supposed to be Lucifer's hour of ultimate victory, the crescendo of a plot sown in Eden's whispering leaves. But the silence was unnerving. No struggle, no angelic armies descending in fury to snatch their king from mortal hands. It was as if Jesus was allowing it. That realization sent tremors of dread through the ranks of hell. Is it not unsettling to consider that demons grasped a secret many believers still struggle to understand today? That power voluntarily restrained is infinitely more terrifying than power violently unleashed. Reflect on the weight of that. Jesus, battered and nailed, still possessed all the authority of the cosmos. He could have uttered a single word, and 12 legions of angels, more than 70,000 divine warriors, each more terrifying than human imagination could conceive, would have torn the earth to shreds to rescue him. Recall how in 2 Kings 19, a solitary angel struck down 185,000 Assyrian soldiers in a single night. Multiply that devastation exponentially, and you begin to glimpse what hung silently on the edge of his breath. Or what if Jesus had merely raised his eyes and summoned fire from heaven, as Elijah once did against the soldiers of Ahaziah? In an instant, Golgotha could have been reduced to molten ruin, Lucifer's forces incinerated by holy wrath. And yet, none of this transpired. There was no thunder, no blaze, no righteous slaughter, only a haunting stillness, punctuated by the soft, labored breathing of the crucified King. And in the unseen realms, that silence was more deafening than the roar of 1,000 storms. High above the hill, Michael's colossal frame was taut, every muscle coiled like a predator held back by chains. His mighty hand gripped the hilt of his sword so fiercely that waves of celestial energy rippled outward, distorting the spiritual atmosphere. His eyes darted toward Uriel, whose entire being blazed with prophetic fire. But Uriel did not waver. He stood radiant and resolute, his eyes fixed unwaveringly on Jesus' anguished face, even from the heights of heaven. Could it be that these exalted guardians, so often dispatched to defend heaven's throne or execute swift judgment, understood a depth to this moment that still eludes us? And what about you? If you were standing amid those dark forces, watching angels hold their breath and demons scatter in confusion, wouldn't your own spirit begin to tremble? Might it not dawn on you that the most terrifying display of might is found not in explosions of violence, but in sacrificial surrender? That true power resides not in defending oneself, but in laying everything down to fulfill a purpose greater than death. So, Michael and Uriel watched, silent witnesses to a cosmic gamble, guarding secrets they dared not reveal. They knew something hell had overlooked. They understood what was about to erupt from that haunting quiet, something that would reverberate across eternity, reaching even into the battles you face today. But that revelation was yet to come, hovering on the cusp of time as all of heaven and hell awaited breathlessly. Now lean in. Let your heart grow still, because what I'm about to unveil extends far beyond dusty hills and iron nails. Before time itself existed, before light fractured the primordial void to reveal the first star, a scroll lay secure in the throne room of eternity. Not just any scroll. This was the scroll sealed 7 times over by the very hand of God. Within its sacred folds were inscribed every detail of the universe's redemption, each prophecy etched like living flame, every precise heartbeat and tear that would guide mankind from ruin to glory. Can you comprehend such a document? To think that long before Eve drew her first breath, your story, your rescue, was already scripted into this divine parchment. And now, at this hour on Golgotha, the seals were opening one by one under the solemn gaze of all creation. This was not the chaos of defeat. It was the deliberate unveiling of a plan so profound that even eternity seemed to hush in awe. Jesus was not hanging there because he was overpowered. How could he be the one through whom all things were made? He chose this descent. He was dying not as a victim, but as a victor, waging a war that no sword or legion could win. Imagine a conflict where triumph demanded plunging deeper than death, darker than mankind's vilest sins, lower than hell's deepest caverns, and then rising from within them, wearing their defeat like a crown. Uriel, the radiant keeper of divine mysteries, understood this strategy. His very being pulsed with the foreknowledge of what was unfolding, even if it scorched him to witness it. Michael, that mighty fortress of celestial war, felt it resonating in his immortal bones. This was the appointed hour, yet despite knowing, they both stood suspended in a tension that no angel had ever experienced: helplessness. They, who had torn kingdoms apart at a single command, could not lift a finger unless heaven itself thundered the order. Their swords remained at their sides. Their wings remained still until the sun decreed otherwise. They could only watch. Then it happened. Jesus' voice, raw from thirst and agony, erupted in a cry that shattered worlds. Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani? My God, why have you forsaken me?" But do not mistake this for a mere lament echoing off Jerusalem's stones. This was not the frail gasp of a defeated man. It was a roar disguised as anguish, a declaration so potent that it carved through dimensions like lightning through night. Imagine standing there, watching the archangels stiffen as if an electric current surged directly from that blood-soaked cross into the highest heavens. In the split second after Jesus' cry shattered the silence, Michael turned to Uriel. There was no fear in his blazing eyes, only reverence, reverence so profound that it seemed to bow even the constellations. Could it be that even these mighty ones had never before witnessed love wielded as the deadliest weapon? In that stillness, in the breath that hovered between heaven and earth, the king, bloodied, gasping, enthroned on timber, issued a command no mortal ear could discern. It was not roared by cherubim, nor proclaimed by trumpet blast. No storm ravaged the heavens. Yet every throne, every dominion, every hidden demon lurking beneath the shadow of the cross felt it as a tremor of holy dread, a whisper that bypassed air and flesh, striking straight into the spirit realm. From Jesus' dying soul to Michael and Uriel, stationed above, it flowed like a river of light. And what was the message that rippled through all that is seen and unseen? It was devastatingly simple. Hold the line. Guard what is mine. Have you ever wondered if, right now, in the chaos of your own life, such a divine whisper might be echoing still? That perhaps, while you are reeling under burdens you barely understand, heaven's armies stand in silent formation, holding their line at the King's decree, preserving destinies written in that ancient scroll, including yours. And so it was on that dreadful hill, with demons scattering and angels tightening their ranks, all of creation braced for what would come next. A command had been given, the battlefield set, but the final strike lay just beyond the horizon of this moment, and you, drawn into this mystery, are left to wonder what impossible victory was about to break through the darkness. Now, on the surface, those words, "Hold the line, guard what is mine," might not sound like they would reverberate through eternity, but when they issued from the cracked lips of the eternal Son, the one through whom all things were made, and in whom all things hold together, Colossians 1:16-19, bleeding and crowned with twisted thorns, they ignited the very architecture of heaven. Can you imagine that? A whisper from a dying man that made galaxies tremble and principalities stand to attention. At that exact moment, Jesus was balanced on the knife's edge of two realities. His battered body hung suspended in the realm of dust and breath, where Roman soldiers cast lots for his robe, and crowds spat curses into the heavy air. But his soul, oh his soul, was already descending into the cavernous depths of death itself, reaching into the shadowed places reserved for the wages of sin. Yet, despite every lash, every nail, every ragged gasp, his divine authority remained unbroken, sovereign, utterly intact. And that's when Michael, heaven's relentless champion, snapped into precise formation. From the very dawn of creation, Michael had been God's appointed general. Was it not he who contended with the spiritual powers over Persia and Greece, Daniel 13:20-21, who guarded Israel's destiny when earthly thrones forgot their maker? Was it not Michael who, in the fierce panorama of Revelation, drove back the dragon and his rebellious angels, casting them out of the highest heaven, Revelation 12:7-9. At the cross, Michael was no passive observer. He was on a sacred assignment, hover with him now just above the Roman sky. His immense form, clad in armor forged before time, loomed like a living fortress. His sword was already unsheathed, not to spill human blood this day, but to safeguard something infinitely more precious. This time, he was not defending a nation with boundaries drawn on crumbling maps. He was protecting a single, solitary person, Jesus. But more was unfolding than even that. Michael stood as sentinel over a transaction of cosmic proportions, as Jesus took on the sins of all humanity. So, as we've journeyed together, peering into the unseen realms above Calvary, we've uncovered a story far grander than a simple execution. It's a story of cosmic warfare, of divine love, and of ultimate sacrifice. We've witnessed Michael and Uriel, not just as observers, but as active participants in a drama that reshaped eternity. And we've seen that the true power of the cross lies not in its brutality, but in the voluntary surrender of divine authority, a sacrifice that continues to echo through the battles we face today. The message is clear. Even in our darkest moments, we are guarded, protected, and destined for a victory secured long ago. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. What resonated with you the most? Did any questions arise as we explored this perspective on the crucifixion? Please leave a comment below and let's start a conversation. And if you enjoyed this journey into the unseen, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future explorations of faith, mystery, and the profound truths hidden within Scripture. Thanks for joining me.